Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 542. My name is Kyle.
And my name is James.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. I've traded James for Zach this week.
That's quite a trade.
Yep. I don't know if
Did you trade up or trade down?
TBD. I'll let you know by the end of the podcast.
Okay. Well, at least I'll say the last line of the podcast. I'll say that for myself.
I thought Zach and I did
Some
an okay.
people refuse to say the last line of the podcast.
I forgot what the last line was. And both he and I blanked on like the housekeeping and the clip. Like it was amateur hour. We didn't realize how much you are the glue of the structure of this podcast.
I don't know about the glue, but I mean, you got somebody's got to take the reins, right?
Yeah. Yep. You've got it all down. Zach and I are like, there's a clip. Maybe there is. Let's find out. Which you did play a clip. I appreciate that.
I did, for sure. I debated playing a clip from a completely different movie than what you guys were talking about, which I probably should have done. But
you should have pulled a Paul Rudd and done a Mac and Me clip.
Yes, that would have been the move.
Yep.
For sure. I think the issue was I couldn't think of anything interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as the other clip, I couldn't think of anything that would make sense. But Mac and Me, I'll keep that one in the back pocket.
All right.
I wonder how many people listening to this would understand that joke. Is that like a joke that's so well known at this point that like the majority of people would know it?
I don't know if the majority would, but I don't want to explain it. I want to leave it a mystery. People can Google if they want to.
Sure. Okay.
I would say there's definitely if you're a strong internet user, you're probably aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be possibly true.
Possibly.
I mean, if you're not in the Paul Rudd circle or another circle that I'm not going to say the name of, then I don't know if it would enter your world.
Which circle's bigger, Paul Rudd or the other guy?
Probably the other guy.
I would say the other guy, yeah.
Yeah. Or at least it was at one point. I'm not sure if it still is. But that's enough being cryptic.
Well, you'll need to do it when we forget about it.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll
have to wait long enough for the hype to die down.
Oh man, this is gonna be years then. If there's anything like past hypes.
Sure. Is there a movie currently that you are not watching because the hype is just too strong? Is there anything on that list currently for you?
Not necessarily. No. I would say, I've avoided some Marvel films.
Okay.
Because
the hype was too intense? I thought that was just because you were kind of sick of Marvel films.
Well, I'm talking like older ones, like Iron Man 3. Is there a lot of hype around Iron Man 3? Not anymore necessarily.
There is no hype on Iron
Okay.
Man 3. I'm not sure there was hype after Iron Man 3 first came out. I mean, people didn't care about Iron Man 3.
I avoided the Spider-Man Far From Home until we did our Spider-Man episode.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say I can't.
I guess there was hype on that movie.
Yeah, I can't name a single one off the top of my head, but there's definitely been movies where they've been hyped and I have zero interest. Oh,
sure.
Doctor Strange, the Doctor Strange 2. I finally watched that because it was on Disney Plus. But when you guys were doing the podcast, I really didn't want to see it. And I was busy anyway, so I was like, that's fine. I'll miss that one.
Sure. So that was less the hype and more ambivalence.
I guess so. But people were hyping that it was Sam Raimi. And, Doctor Strange is supposed to be the Iron Man of whatever this phase 4 is.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure that is not happening.
Oh, I mean,
at least in my brain, people are not adopting him as the new, Iron Man leader of the MCU.
Not at all.
But I will say that if you like Raimi or you like the Spider-Man Raimi movies, that Doctor Strange is like right up that alley, and it will be enjoyable for you.
Oh, I've seen it already.
Oh, you did watch it.
I did watch it. I
You're
was saying,
not avoiding it then.
no, I said I did avoid it until it was on Disney Plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. What'd you think of that um bat wing design at the end? I love that. It's like burned into my brain. You know what
The
I'm talking about?
Batwing design?
Might not be bats. It might be like ghouls. Remember like the zombie Doctor spoilers for Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Zombie Doctor Strange
Yeah, I
at
remember
the
that.
end and like maybe it was like spirits. They come together and like form wings on him.
Oh. Yeah, I guess that wasn't very memorable.
Oh, you're crazy.
I,
I barely remember the movie, but I remember that.
I like the music battle.
That was great too.
Where I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
I mean
and inventive.
it was definitely a Sam Raimi movie. Like his fingerprints were all
Mhm.
over that. So I give him credit for sticking to his style within Marvel. I don't know if the movie was forgettable. Like I don't remember the Batwing anymore.
Sure.
It was. I'll give you my quick take on it because we're not here to
Okay.
talk about Doctor Strange. So when they travel through the multiverse, remember that
Mhm.
like they first go through and they fly through like 20 different multiverses.
Mhm.
And one's paint, one's pixels, one's crazy buildings, blah blah blah. You see all these great ones, glimpses of it, and then they end up in New York City with flowers.
Mhm.
I'm like, that's the best you can do.
I mean, I don't know if it's the best they can do, but I think it's probably the safest because they weren't going to stay in like claymation land very long.
Yeah, but I mean, like, look at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Not the safest movie.
Right, but they didn't go into an alternate dimension where everything was melting or anything. You know what I mean? They
No, they
kept it
didn't go that
pretty
crazy, but
real
they
world.
did bring in like like noir Batman or noir Spider-Man and anime Spider-Man and like
Did you see No Way Home pre or post Everything Everywhere All at Once?
wait, No Way Home or
Whatever, the multiverse Spider-Man
oh
movie.
oh no Multiverse Spider-Man I saw pre Everything Everywhere All at Once because we did that. We actually did an episode on that. So then I saw in the theater.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think after you see Everything Everywhere All at Once and they have like hot dog multiverse and you know what I mean, all those other things, and
Raccacoonie.
then you see Doctor Strange and
Yeah.
they end up in New York with flowers, you're like, this is nothing compared to what Everything Everywhere All at Once did
Correct. That's a good
with their
point. Yeah.
multiverses. So, I think it's a fair comparison now that those two movies have come out in the order they have. But nobody complained that they didn't do multiverse wackiness in that Spider-Man movie because that came out before Everything Everywhere All at Once.
But they also did it differently. Instead of Spider-Man traveling to different multiverses, they brought different Spider-Men into one universe. Like it was a different take on it.
Right. I agree. And the only resistance I have is, do you remember Booksmart? Did you see Booksmart?
Oh yeah, that's Beanie Feldstein and the other woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a scene where they take drugs and they trip out, and then it cuts to like Barbie Land where they're
Yeah, I
like
remember that.
Barbies and stuff, and I
Mhm.
hated that part of the movie. And
Really?
I'm afraid if they were to do that for real in a Marvel movie, like just kind of do a stop motion animation segment, or like Kill Bill when they went anime for like 15
Mhm.
minutes, I just I can't imagine it going well in a Marvel movie, but
I mean,
maybe.
I'd like to see him try. Maybe it'll fail, and maybe we'll get stuck with more New York City with flowers. But
Yeah,
be nice
I'm
if they tried.
shocked we're not getting full 3D animated Marvel movies yet. You know what I mean?
Besides
Like,
Spider Verse.
right. I mean, that was like 2D. It was 3D animation kind of with the 2D presentation here and there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about just like Pixar style, but I mean, if you look at Marvel movies themselves, all the action sequences are like
It's all animated
90%
anyway.
CGI anyway. Might as
Yeah.
well, and like all the Iron Man suits, like all that stuff is CG. So you're basically just replacing the human, and you have, you know, full 3D animated movies for adults with a realistic look. And I think they're gonna do that eventually. They have to.
Disney has a bunch of Marvel cartoons, more for kids, like
Mhm.
made for Disney Plus, made for TV cartoons.
Right, but they're
But
not like Final Fantasy style trying to replicate humans and stuff like that.
no, or they're Lego. Those are the other ones they have.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. There is no. I think DC is doing more of the let's make kids movies with these characters than Marvel is.
Sure. Yeah. I heard a rumor that you have a check-in.
I do have a check-in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
All right. So over the last year, I've been um, amassing some movie related board games, like
Okay.
official movie board games.
Sure.
And I just thought I could share some of the ones I've gotten because I've had a chance to play all of them in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Give you a quick
Nice.
quick little
Sure. Quick
overview of them.
little movie-based board game tour.
Exactly, because
Are you literally going to
I
put
love board
them?
games too.
Are you going to put them in front of your camera? Do you have them right
I
there?
they're over there. I guess I
Oh,
mean, yeah,
okay.
I guess I could. I can put them on the camera, and then I can also post on Instagram too.
Okay.
Okay, let me go grab them, and you can either fill this space or just cut this 10 seconds out.
All right. I mean, I can't imagine what I would talk to myself about for 10 seconds. But maybe I can tell people that there's a video version of this podcast, which would be perfect for this segment, a video version of the podcast. You can find it on YouTube at youtube.com. Click the search box, type Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end. Check out the YouTube, and you can watch Kyle giving us a movie board game tour. You could also follow us on Patreon, support us there, patreon.com/Cinerealists, get extra after show audio. We'd also appreciate it if you haven't already, if you were to leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. Also, finally, you could send us a listener email to heyguys@cinerealists.com and send us a comment, a question, a list suggestion. Tell us where you're listening from. Tell us about your favorite movie-based board game. Any of those types of things. We would love to get an email, and we will probably, most likely, talk about it on a future episode of listener email on this very podcast. Kyle, did you get your games?
I did, and what a great filler to put right
Thank
there.
you.
What a
All
great
right.
tie-in. All right. So I've got 4 of them here, and I thought I was kind of going the order that I bought them in and received them in. It's a little history.
Totally arbitrary, but sure.
Why not? Why not? So, well,
These are ranked in the order you purchased them. Perfect.
or we're given.
Okay, or we're given.
Reverse chronological. So the first one that I got was Jaws, the board game.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so this is obviously based on the 1975 Steven Spielberg movie Jaws.
Right.
And it's a 3 versus 1 game where 3 people can play Quint, Brody, and Hooper, and then 1 person plays the shark.
Nice.
And so you're trying to the shark's trying to win by eating everyone, and the 3 main characters are trying to defeat the shark. And it's a cool game because it's a 2-part game. So you play in 2 phases. Actually, a lot of these games are multi-phase. So the first one is the island, and the shark is secretly swimming around the island, eating people in the ocean. And the other 3 people are on their boats or on land trying to spot the shark and attach the yellow barrels to it, just like in the movie.
Okay.
And then depending on how fast you can attach the barrels to the shark versus how many people it eats, then it goes on to the second phase where you're on the orca and the shark is attacking the orca, and you're trying to kill the shark with various weapons you have on hand.
Okay.
And in the second phase, you can be eaten by the shark. In the first phase, you're safe. But in the second one, your character can be eaten and die from the shark attack. So it's kind of a race to see who can you survive, or is that shark going to eat you?
So it's a little bit of a cooperative game if you have more than 2 players.
Yeah, I've played it 2-player where 1 person controls all 3 cast members and 1 person controls the shark. and that's fun. It's also fun to play 3 versus 1 too. Also,
Nice.
all right. My second one, and this is probably my favorite one, and not just because of the movie it's connected to, but it's actually a legitimately fun game. Fast and Furious Highway Heist.
All right. Okay.
Now, at first I was like, of course Kyle likes the Fast and Furious game. And yes, I bought it because it's Fast and Furious, not gonna lie.
Sure.
But it is a legitimately fun game to play.
All right.
So the board is just like a strip of highway. And the whole idea is you're kind of driving around this highway and you don't really move left and right too much. You know, you're not like racing around a track. Kind of as time goes by, things move past you, that kind of idea. But there's different scenarios that are taken from the movie that you're trying to accomplish in this game. So you get to choose like one of the main characters. You could be Dom or Brian or Letty or Tej or a couple of the other ones. You get to choose a car, and then you get to choose one of the scenarios. And one of the scenarios is you're trying to defeat a tank on the highway, like in Fast and Furious 6. One of them is you're trying to rob a semi-truck, like in the original Fast and Furious. And then one of them is you're trying to defeat Deckard Shaw in a helicopter, which I think is from Fast and Furious 7. And, you know, everyone has similar abilities and cars can do different things. But what makes the game a lot of fun is they have these special stunts you can pull off. And if you meet the criteria of the stunt, so depending on like where you are in relation to the enemy or if there's extra cars on the road, you can do one of these stunts, which is like a Fast and Furious style stunt where you can like, you know, launch your car off of a flipped over car and ram into the helicopter or something like that. So it's a game where it seemed to really capture the energy of the Fast and Furious movies of like what ridiculous things can you do. You can't die, just like in the Fast and Furious movie. Your car can get destroyed, but if your car gets destroyed, you just magically jump to another car. No one dies in the Fast and Furious game.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's also a game where I think if they're smart, they can release more scenarios, like expansion packs.
Sure.
Because it comes with 3 and they all use the same board and similar figures. So all you have to do is like, you know, $10-15, do here's another scenario from this movie. And I would definitely buy it and play it.
Nice. So I recently rewatched Fast and Furious, the original.
Okay.
Like I think right before 9, was that the last one that there was?
There's 9 so far, yeah.
Yeah, I think I rewatched everything up to 9, like in a week or something like that.
Oh yeah, because we talked the whole series with my wife.
Right. Yep. And the first Fast and Furious movie, I don't know if you've watched that one for a while, but you know, they hijack that truck at the beginning. Do you remember what was inside the truck?
Wasn't it DVD players?
Worse.
Oh.
VHS players.
Oh,
VHS players.
I thought at least for 2001 they're stealing DVD players. They're stealing VHS.
Well, you figure if it came out in 2001, then they probably filmed it in like 99 maybe. And they probably wrote it in like 98.
Yeah.
Or so. And DVDs were around and they kind of exploded Matrix-ish in 1999. Before that, it was like out of most people's reach. And DVD players were not cheap in the early days. But yeah, there's photos online of what was in the back of the truck. And it's like VHS players and like TV VHS combos.
Oh man, those I had one of those in college. That was a hot ticket item, a TV VHS combo.
It was amazing. Normally it's cell phones that date a movie, and in that movie it's the Hall that they were so desperately fighting to steal.
And the fact that it's still about street racing back then.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what else you got?
All right. The third one is, and I got this one fairly recently, Alien, Fates of the Nostromo.
Okay, nice.
Nostromo. My apologies. Nostromo was a restaurant my wife used to work for. So this is a game based on the first Alien movie. It's a cooperative game where you get to choose one of the main characters from Alien, minus the guy with the face hugger chest thing. He's already dead by this point. And it's a game where The board is basically like the Nostromo, and you and your crew are trying to accomplish certain objectives similar to the movie, like, go to this room and bring this item, or go to this space and drop this off, while the alien is stalking you through the ship. And
Nice.
it's another game where, um, unlike the Alien movies, no one can die, because it'd be kind of boring if you get killed really early in the game and then your friends keep playing. So instead, they have this fear tracker or morale tracker where every time you encounter the alien, your crew morale goes down. And if it eventually reaches 0, then the alien wins and you've lost the game. And it's a game that I played twice, once 2-player with my wife and once 4-player with my friends. And it's a challenge. Like, it's definitely a game where you have to really manage morale, because you're gonna run into the alien. Like, it's impossible to not encounter it. And as the game
Sure.
goes on, you have more and more encounters. So it's a game I want to keep playing, because when I play with 4 people, we got destroyed.
Sure.
Yeah. But we had a good time
Nice.
with it, though.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one is, I didn't even know this game existed. Like, these other 3 I had purchased myself. This one was given to me. Top Gun, the board game.
Yeah.
No idea this game existed. My brother gave it to me out of the blue. I was like, oh, cool. And I have not fully played the game yet, just because I tried it with my wife and my 6-year-old son, and there were some gaming concepts that they weren't really a fan of, so we didn't complete it, but we at least tried it out.
Sure.
This is another 2-parter game. It's either a 2-player or 4-player. 4-player is kind of fun because one team is Maverick and Goose, and the other team is Iceman and Slider. So it's a competitive cooperative game. And it's in 2 phases. The second phase is obviously dogfights, because that's the point of Top Gun. But the first phase is volleyball.
So you're literally playing a volleyball game?
With cards. Yeah, you're not actually like playing, you're not playing literal volleyball, but
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
just mean like the structure of the game is like, in order to get past phase 1, you have to win the volleyball game.
exactly. You have a 3x3 grid of cards in front of you with like bumps that spike and whiffs on them, and you're trying to reveal your opponent's whiffs first, and whoever whiffs the most first loses the round, and then the winner gets an advantage going into the dogfight.
Interesting.
And then the dogfight is very similar to, there's another, I played it like a World War II dog airplane game. There's a Star Wars game also based on it, where you kind of choose your moves, you choose what direction you're pointing, what your elevation is, and then kind of where you're firing at. And then if your opponent ends up in that firing zone, then you get to roll for a target lock. So it's definitely kind of a strategy game if you're trying to predict where your opponent's going to be and how can you maneuver there. And we started that section, and I could tell that my wife and my son were like, yeah, I don't really enjoy this part of the game. So, and
they enjoyed the volleyball
they
aspect.
enjoyed the volleybal part of it. Yeah, they thought that was fun. And then we got into the dog fighting, and like, it's on a hexagon grid, kind of like Warhammer style, or like BattleTech, those kind of games.
Sure.
So games that I used to play all the time when I was younger, but if you're not used to playing like that, it's a lot to think about it. So it's a game that I definitely want. I've got a group of friends, and I want to try it with them and give it a shot, but it looks like it's fun.
I'm surprised you don't have this one, and maybe it's on your list someday to get, but you don't have The Shining, the Shining board game?
Oh, I've seen the Shining board game. I don't have it yet, no.
So there's actually 2 Shining board games.
Okay.
And one is highly rated and one is lesser rated. I think they're both like not necessarily, one of them, like I said, is highly rated. The other one is good, but not. Supposedly the one Shining game is like as good as a non-licensed game. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not, they definitely didn't cash in just because it was Shining type of thing. And then there was another one. There's a Back to the Future game that I think I've played with you, right? When you were in town at Zach's house, or was that somebody else?
I played with you the Bill and Ted game, which
Bill
was
and
super
Ted.
fun.
That's what I'm thinking of.
that game was awesome.
Right. Bill
Yeah.
and Ted. I'm trying to think of other ones that are like
There's
not your like Milton Bradley, Target, Kmart, board games. Like,
yeah.
we're talking hobbyist board games.
So most of these are at Target. To be like Target board games have expanded. They're not, but you're right. It's not just your normal like roll a die and move around a board kind of game.
I mean, that's true. You can buy like Ticket to Ride and a couple other that were traditionally hobby board games, but now they sell them at Target for like full price, like $40.
Yeah.
Right off the shelf at Target, which is crazy. I guess they got to put something on the shelves since they're no longer carrying physical media. So
there's a Goonies one. There's a Princess Bride one, which looks interesting.
Okay.
So, I don't want to buy these just because they're all movie related. But I do find it fun to like find a game that can capture a movie in its gameplay. And I think Fast and Furious and Jaws is probably the most successful of all these so far. You're like, okay, I really feel like I'm playing the movie.
Sure.
But not just like going through the motions.
You didn't feel like you had removed your shirt and you were playing volleyball as you were whiffing cards over?
I tried that and I've just made my family uncomfortable.
Sure. I understand.
But definitely when playing Fast and Furious, you have to add sound effects. Like it's more fun that way.
Well, I'm out. I guess I also have a check-in. I'll make this quick.
Okay.
Last weekend, I hung out with my high school friends, like I mentioned the last time I was on the podcast, and it went great. No problems.
Good. Yeah. And it was just the friends, not their families?
No, it was friends and families.
It was in family. Okay.
So there was 13 people, 5 adults, and 8 children. And the kids were great. Ages 5 to 15, I believe. So it's a nice, decent spread. And I didn't really have any fears going in, but any of the concerns that you planted in my brain, none of them happened.
Oh, good. No one was a jerk then.
No.
It wasn't awkward.
I mean, I wouldn't say there was like 100%, never not awkward. I don't know what that sentence was I just said, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there was occasionally awkwardness, but I mean, that's what it's going to be when you're hanging out with people that you haven't hung out with in a long time. But for the most part, not awkward.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you. This is a show. It's a show we talk about movies, and we're here to talk about 2 very specific movies. Those being the 2 we selected and watched before we hit record this evening. Those 2 movies are both streaming only movies. So if you want to go to the theater, too bad. Can't see these movies. You gotta stay home. And you gotta subscribe to 2 separate streaming services to get it done. And one of them, you have to pay $90 a year. Is that what Prime costs these days, or did it go up?
I think it's over 100 now.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never paid for Prime. I always get it. I ride coattails.
Me neither.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Prime is amazing. If you have a brother or a sister, or I don't know if you can do it for friends, but you can definitely do it for family. You don't even have to live in the same house, and they'll let you ride somebody else's Prime account completely legally.
Oh, yeah.
And like ship things to your house and just use it as your own. I don't know how that company makes money, but they obviously do.
I don't know if they make money. Isn't Amazon still not profitable technically?
I mean, on paper, but I think that's more because it's advantageous for them to reinvest over taking a profit.
True, because they pay taxes on profits.
I think at some point they're going to want to start making profits, and they're going to delay that as much as possible and see how big they can get, which is pretty big.
They first need to build some more spaceships before they can.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk 2 movies on streaming. We're going to start with the first one right now. This is a movie that's streaming on Amazon Prime. It's called 13 Lives. Here's a clip.
You are very brave. How do you stay so strong?
We are team. We help each other, and our coach help us.
Coach.
ผมต้องขอโทษด้วยนะครับที่พาเด็กมาเสี่ยงอันตราย
ไม่จริงครับไม่จริงครับคุณช่วยหมูครับโอเคครับโค้ชโค้ชเก่งที่สุดครับ
It's because of our coach. We are stay strong. He teach us to meditate.
That was 13 Lives, a 2022 American biographical survival film. This movie was directed by Ron Howard and produced by, shocker, Brian Grazer, amongst others.
Why should that be shocking?
It's not shocking.
Okay.
he produces everything that Ron Howard does, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I was like, am I missing something here?
No, it's not shocking at all. This movie stars Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell.
Were you making fun of me there, or was that an actual
No,
slip?
I was not. That was an actual slip. I should give myself this.
Chweidel Elijah 4. Thank you.
Also stars Joel Edgerton and a bunch of other people you won't recognize their name, so I won't even attempt to say it. But there's a large cast of Thai actors in the movie,
Mhm.
and a couple more not Americans, but like British actors here and there. But it's a nice big cast with 3 big actors at the top of the heap there for sure. The movie is based on the cave entrapment. I don't know what you'd call it. In 2018, there was a soccer team. I'm going to read the official IMDb plot.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I bet it goes over this. The official IMDb plot synopsis for 13 Lives is a rescue mission is assembled in Thailand where a group of young boys and their soccer coach are trapped in a system of underground caves that are flooding. Perfect description. Leaves out that it's based on a true story. If you remember back in 2018 in Thailand, there was a soccer team of 12 kids and a soccer coach.
Yeah.
And they got trapped in a cave because during monsoon season, there can kind of be flash floods inside the caves. And they got trapped in the cave and nobody knew if they were alive. Then they found them. They were alive. Then the question was, can they get them out? And I mean, I don't know if we can spoil this movie because it was a very well-known thing. But if you don't know what happened, I say like either watch this movie or watch the documentary based on it. There's no reason for you to know exactly how it ends, but you probably already know exactly how it ends.
I don't think we should say how they got them out because that's actually something I forgot.
Okay.
Like I forgot the specific method they used, and that added to my enjoyment of the movie.
Perfect. So now, if you didn't know how it ended, you know that they got out, but you don't know how.
Well,
I think most people listening to this will know that, it was a great story.
It was a great story. Yes.
It was a great story for sure. And it was one of those rare times where it's something that really shouldn't happen. Not necessarily the accident or them getting entrapped, just that everything worked out.
Right.
You know what I mean? For the most part. There's some things we're leaving out,
Yeah.
but for the most part, on the surface, everything worked out better than anybody probably imagined in the moment. So,
Yeah, usually these stories don't always have the ending like this one has.
for sure. So, yeah, Ron Howard, as he is wont to do occasionally, Apollo 13, amongst others, dramatized a real life thing that happened. And he's continuing that trend with 13 Lives. Kyle, what did you think of this movie?
So I'm a little mixed on this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Let
Why?
me tell you first what I liked about it because I have lots
right.
of thoughts on it. Like I mentioned before, I forgot about the specifics of the rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So when they went over the plan of how they were going to get the boys out and the coach out, I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I forgot about that. That's kind of crazy. And then all the scenes of them showing them, like there's some great underwater scuba diving or cave diving scenes throughout this movie where you really feel the claustrophobia where you've got the actors, they're diving through these incredibly narrow passages. There's stalagmites and stalactites everywhere. The water is incredibly murky. Apparently, the water is even denser in the actual cave, but this being a movie, they actually want to see things. They still got the murkiness of it. Um, I didn't realize how long it took them. Like every so often, the movie would show a little map of sort of where the rescuers or the boys are and how many hours of dive time they are away from the entrance. And I didn't realize that we're talking hours of time underwater to get
Yeah.
to and from them. So
Not only
see-
hours, like a working day is like 8 hours. There were
Yeah.
some trips that were nearly 8 hours.
sometimes, yeah, like one way would be 5 to 6 hours,
Right.
and then you have to go back.
Crazy.
So like all that was fascinating, especially the back half of the movie when they're working on the rescue and the logistics. And you're getting all these pretty claustrophobic underwater shots. I was really digging that. But the movie has an odd pace to it,
Mhm.
and it definitely it tries to kind of, I don't know, maybe rush to the good stuff. And it's still a 2.5 hour long movie, so like they don't truncate it, but you like within the first, I don't know, 20 minutes of the movie, the boys and their coach enter the cave. The cave gets flooded. People find out, and like 48 hours pass in 15 minutes of this movie. And you don't check in with the boys at all. So this whole time you're just sort of getting this outside perspective of what's happening. And it felt a little odd. And then when they find the kids, then they kind of bring them back into the fold, and you realize, okay, maybe they're trying to isolate you from how they're doing, like how the outside world felt isolated. But
Mhm.
I thought it would have been a little bit more interesting to see their ordeal inside the cave for those first couple days, because they were in there like 10 days before they were found, correct?
Was it 10 days? I
Or
thought it was like I don't know. I don't remember.
it was shy of 2 weeks. It was a long time.
Mhm.
So, part of my curiosity was, how did they survive for 11 days in pitch blackness without food?
Mhm.
Right? That right there is a feat in itself. And then you bring in a lot of characters. Like you've got Colin Farrell and Viggo Mortensen are playing British divers. They have a team with them. You meet some other um, people from Thailand or related to Thailand who are involved in the rescue. But you never really learn a ton about them. Like they just kind of show up, they do their thing, and there's not a ton of like development or interest in who these people are.
Mhm.
It's just more interested in what they're doing in that moment. So like Viggo Mortensen, I got was kind of a cynic, and I can't tell you anything about Colin Farrell's character whatsoever, besides the fact that he had a son.
I mean, he's the good guy that's organizing it and
I-
keeping all the divers and, not in check, but like encouraging them to
I
keep
guess so,
going.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, Joel Edgerton, he's the doctor and his dad's sick. But
Mhm.
like everyone just was they were kind of, to me, they're a little paper thin. And they're based on real people. And I know the story of this is supposed to be more about the rescue and these kids and not so much about the rescuers, but I could have used just, I don't know, some more information about them or some more development in them. Um and maybe that would have made it a little bit more interesting or more captivating.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's sort of that's kind of how I'm mixed on it. And there's the movie's trying to tell you what's going on, so it uses like the classic news narration where they'll have an actual newscaster being like, "It is now day 13 of the cave rescue. The boys have just been found," and
Mhm.
that just, I'm like, okay, like there's not a better way we can get information to the audience. It's pretty lazy shorthand there. Uh, but I did like Colin Farrell's actual performance. The same for Viggo Mortensen. Like Colin Farrell, I've never seen him play. He was this confident person, but he wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't like maybe more of the manly man he sometimes plays on screen. Like just
Mhm.
you kind of watch like his posture, how he would sit, how he would talk to people. He was just much meeker of a character than we normally see him play. And obviously he's a good actor and he, has range, but I've never seen him play kind of a quiet character before.
Mhm.
And this was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen him play a real life person. Trying to think.
I mean, he played John Smith in New World.
Did he?
Yeah,
The Terrence Malick movie?
yeah, he was John Smith.
Wow. I need to rewatch that,
But
evidently.
it's not like we know about John. Like we can't interview him, or we don't have photos and video of him or anything like that. Like he's a
Right.
historical figure.
He might as well be a made-up person.
Right, yeah, and it's a Terrence Malick film, so he's doing his own take on that story anyway.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Colin Farrell ever, be a real life person either. I don't think I can't think of a movie where he's like, it's a biographical film.
Wait, we're just talking about Colin Farrell. He's John Smith.
No. Oh, I said Vigo. Or
Oh,
did I say Colin?
I think you said Colin.
I might have said Colin. I meant Vigo, but now
okay.
I'm saying Colin.
Okay.
So has Vigo.
Has Vigo? Well, I mean, he was Green Book, wasn't that? I've never seen Green Book, but wasn't that based on a real person?
That is based on a real
Okay.
person. Yeah. It is. Foiled again. Have you ever seen The Rescue, the documentary that came out last year?
No, and I want to, and I'm curious to know, because you've seen The Rescue.
I have.
So I'm curious to know, did The Rescue make you enjoy this movie more or less? Or if people had to choose one, which one should they watch?
All good questions. I'll preamble all of my answers with, I think I'm still going to give this movie a star rating, but it is definitely clouded by The Rescue.
Okay.
And watching that movie so close to this movie. Like The Rescue came out last year. I watched it because it was nominated for an Oscar. I think it should have won. I don't think it did, but it should have.
No, so I think Summer of Soul won, which is a
Summer of Soul was
fair
a
win.
worthy winner too.
Yeah.
But if it was between those two, I'm happy that one of those two won for sure. So The Rescue, the documentary based on the exact same event, is really good, and it's mostly in the moment footage because they filmed themselves making these dives and stuff like that. And that's what I like about documentaries. It's super tense, and it explains everything this movie explains. Like all the intricacies of why people thought the way they thought, and why they tried things that were dangerous, and why they didn't try other things that were dangerous. And there's literally nothing in 13 Lives that isn't covered in a shorter documentary.
So maybe that was my issue with the movie. Not that I've seen the Rescue, but this one felt very rote of like, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're not doing this. And like, so it was giving you, it felt like I was watching someone adapting the Wikipedia article.
Yeah. The difference is in The Rescue, you're hearing the real guys talk about that. And especially when it comes to the Joel Edgerton character, when he needs to make a specific decision that we're not going to talk about, seeing the real guy talk about the weight of that decision was far more effective than Joel Edgerton's character spending 30 seconds and then you cut to something else happening and then you cut back to him and he's like, I think we will do that thing. And it's kind of like, I remember that guy, the real person in the documentary that I watched 4 months ago, like agonizing over the implications of what might happen.
I read that the Thai government granted him diplomatic immunity just in case his plan went completely south. Yeah.
So there are like little details like that I think were represented in 13 Lives. I think they got the beats correct.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're so correct that like it just feels extra to have a dramatic version of it because they didn't change anything, which normally is like something that's cool. But I think, like I said, my opinion on this movie is definitely clouded by I just saw this story. And this one is not telling it in an interesting way or a different way. It's telling it in the almost exact same way. Minus, substituting real footage for, fictionalized version of real footage. And all of those things being so accurate probably makes this a good adaptation. And I think people who haven't watched the documentary will not have any of that baggage. And so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. If you've seen the documentary recently, you probably won't get a whole lot out of 13 Lives. If you haven't, I'd probably watch 13 Lives first. And then if you need more, then watch the documentary. Unless you're a big documentary fan and you just haven't gotten to the rescue, watch that one first. And who cares if this Ron Howard movie is spoiled for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. But if you're not a documentary person, then watch 13 Lives and don't worry about it. I enjoyed watching Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell just be normal guys on screen.
Mhm.
They don't really have to do anything flashy. They just have to emulate the people that they're portraying. And I feel like Colin Farrell might be kind of attuned to that mission, but Viggo Mortensen, I just don't think of him in that way as an actor. Not that he's like, a huge actor. He's like Nick Caging it up in Vampire's Kiss or anything. He's normally a pretty subtle actor. I just imagine him more in movies that are amped up around him. And it was interesting to see him in a fairly nondescript role. Same with Joel Edgerton, same
Yeah.
with Colin Farrell. They're all just kind of British dudes who like cave diving. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of them. And they're put in this situation, which they've been in before, maybe not with this much pressure and 11 and the timeline and all that, but they're cave divers who are on the volunteer rescue team. So it's to assume they've rescued people before from caves. So it's not like they're nobodies that are being called into this. But I thought the filmmaking aped the documentary very well. It's kind of like if you learned Cliffhanger was like based on a real life thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch the documentary after you saw the movie and you're like, oh, they literally made the documentary. They just made it beat by beat. That's what 13 Lives feels for me. Meanwhile, Cliffhanger is not a documentary. So that's why it's obviously better than this movie.
There wasn't a mountainous helicopter attack.
No.
Oh, man.
There wasn't, unfortunately. I mean, there may have been, but not directly related to that movie.
Nothing as cool as Cliffhanger.
For sure. Yeah, so it's hard for me to really give this movie a fair shake, unfortunately. As a Ron Howard movie, perfectly watchable. It's no what was that other movie that like took place in the South?
Oh, Hillbilly Elegy?
It's no Hillbilly Elegy.
No.
Like, this is a pretty safe movie to follow up a Hillbilly Elegy with, for sure.
But it's also no Apollo 13.
Sure.
Like, with Apollo 13, even though you know how that ends, it just felt like the stakes were higher in that movie and how he presented it.
Can I be honest for a second? When I saw Apollo 13, I don't think I fully absorbed how it was going to end before
Really?
I watched it.
Okay.
I mean, like, I remember hearing about things related to Apollo 13, but I definitely did not know the details.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely did not know as I watched the movie whether people perish in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you weren't sure, like, were they all going to get out or not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how old I was when I watched it in a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
What would I have been, 12 or something like that? 13?
It was mid-90s. I can't give you an exact year.
Yeah, I would guess I was 13 or so. And so
Okay.
I certainly had heard the words Apollo 13, but it wasn't, I don't feel, in my world, it wasn't a thing that people talked about compared to the moon landing.
Well, and we were alive when this cave was flooded 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We were not alive during the Apollo era. So
Right. And also, I was probably an idiot. And I just hadn't fully absorbed
your words, not mine.
the details of Apollo 13. And so when I watched it in the movie theater, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen in the next 5 minutes. Whereas in this movie, I knew exactly what was going to happen because they were following the documentary I had just watched. So it was more like, what are they going to leave out? And then they didn't leave out anything.
I do have a question. During the rescue, one of the rescuers seems to have a bit of a mishap.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a little lost.
Yes.
and then someone kind of helps him out. Was that dramatized, or did that
No.
happen?
Happened.
That happened too. Okay, I couldn't. I did do some reading afterwards. I'm like, okay, how much of this is true? What did they leave out? Okay, so that did something like that did happen.
I can't, from my memory,
Okay,
which is notoriously rock solid. I can't think of a single thing that was talked about in the documentary that was not duplicated in this movie.
okay. So nothing was really made up. I'm sure some characters were condensed, or I'm sure there's more people involved in this than.
Again, based on my memory,
Okay.
I can't think of one that was in the documentary that was not represented in this movie. Not even as like combining characters.
I got the impression from reading online that at some point a team of divers would help the boys get out. It wasn't just a one-on-one operation the entire way out.
Oh, that's in the movie though. Right at the end, they all of a sudden all these divers show up.
Well, okay, but I guess I'm trying to. How I read it was like, for the most treacherous parts, it would be one diver with one boy, but then for some of the other parts, there'd be like 3 divers to a boy.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember that
Okay,
in the documentary, but it might be in there.
but it's more,
possible.
for if you're trying to make a dramatized movie, it's more interesting if there's this one-on-one journey.
Yeah.
Versus,
I can imagine the process of them getting out being super suspenseful in 13 Lives if you don't know what that process was.
Yeah.
When I watched the documentary, I didn't know. I had never heard that. And it was super suspenseful in the documentary. So
I mean, as I was watching 13 Lives, like, because I forgot the specifics of the rescue, I was shaking my head like, this is insane. Like, even though I know how this ends, this is crazy that this is how they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like having watched 13 Lives after watching the documentary, this feels like a very by the numbers disaster retelling type of thing. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing because, again, my judgment I feel is clouded. I think if you came to this and you hadn't just watched that, then there would probably be a lot of interesting things that you could learn.
Yeah.
Or be expanded upon that you may have known, but you didn't know the details of. So, yeah.
Well, I definitely want to check out The Rescue. And my wife did not watch 13 Lives with me, but I think she and I are going to watch The Rescue together.
Okay. It's definitely worth a watch.
Cool.
One of the better documentaries from last year and one of the few documentaries that has suspense in it.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
can hold some level of that going on. So 13 Lives. Let's letterbox it. Kyle, what'd you give it?
3 stars.
3 stars. I will also give it 3 stars. I think it probably deserves more than that, but again, I caveated that. One that I think is maybe better that people will know less about, possibly, is the 33 from 2015. Also a cave rescue movie. This was the miners in Chile. Remember when there was like 33 miners?
Yes.
Half a decade ago, that got there was a cave in and they got stuck, and people assumed also that they were not going to survive this. The 33 is great.
Yeah, they were underground for 70 days.
Yes.
Was that the one where they? Okay, yeah. What then? They drilled a giant hole and they could take up like one person at a time.
Been a while since I've seen the 33.
Okay.
I don't remember if they did it that way. They definitely connected a hole so that they could pump oxygen down there and drop food and stuff like that. So they did. There's a lot, from my memory, there's a lot of like the people in the cave. Whereas in this one, you were rarely with the boys unless the divers were there with them. Whereas the 33, you spend a good deal of time with the people below and a good deal of time with the people above. And the people above are just trying to figure out how to get to them. Because in 13 Lives, they know where they are in general. If they're alive, they're down this cave. that only goes
It's only
this
one way it
direction
can
or
go.
that direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically. Whereas with the 33, they roughly know where this cave goes, and the only way to get to it is not the entrance anymore. And so they have to find an alternate way to locate them, figure out whether they're alive, and then solve the issue of getting them out. And the 33 happened long ago enough that you might not remember how it ended.
Yeah, so I'll happily spoil the 33, but
Sure.
13 Lives, no spoilers.
And that movie
True events.
stars Antonio Banderas,
Yeah.
Juliette Binoche, Lou Diamond Phillips. You'll recognize a bunch of people in it.
Cool. Well, I
It's a good
will
one.
possibly check that one out.
All right. We watched another movie this week. This one not based on a true story, for sure. This one is streaming exclusively on Hulu or Disney Plus if you live anywhere but the United States. Evidently, it's on Disney Plus. It's wild how on Disney Plus they're like, we're not going to have any R-rated content on this service, and then immediately they put R-rated content everywhere but the United States on Disney Plus. As they rolled it out in other places.
Yeah. At some point, Disney Plus is going to absorb Hulu, even in the US, right?
I don't know. It just depends on whether they're gonna. I mean, they're now saying that like the Deadpool movies will be on Disney Plus,
I've
like
heard,
the
yeah.
Marvel stuff that's R-rated. They're gonna move over and have parental controls and strong content warnings and stuff like that. I'm just not sure they're gonna move non-Disney but Disney-owned properties. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be. We could have a whole podcast episode about streaming wars, and
It's
other
still
people
kind
do
of
it already.
It still kind of blows my mind that The Simpsons is like a fifth, like it's its own channel on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my parents didn't want me to watch The Simpsons. You know what I
Same
mean?
Here, yeah, I was like when I was those first couple of years it came out, I could not watch it.
Right. So Disney, they make a streaming service, and evidently that's out the window. Evidently, like The Simpsons is fine for any age at this point.
Well, I mean, I do think in the last 40 years,
People have toned down the rhetoric on The Simpsons.
Right, and maybe what we accept on television has changed a little bit. So
I still would not let unfettered access to The Simpsons for like all ages, which is what Disney Plus does.
That's true. Well, I mean, but you can put parental controls on. Like my son has we have Disney Plus, and then he has his own profile, and I have controls turned on, which is weird though, because like he can't watch Mulan, for example, like the cartoon 1997 Mulan, whatever year that came out. Like he has to go
Is
over
that
to
because
mine.
of like cultural reasons?
I don't know. I don't know why that one's like locked behind whatever control I have set up. So occasionally, or like Zootopia's another one. I mean, like I don't. Mine's not password protected. He could go over to my profile, watch whatever he wants, but he's a good kid, so he doesn't do that yet. So like if he wants to watch Zootopia, he'll be like, "Hey, can I go to your profile?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." He'll go over there and watch it. But it's weird what they block for parental controls and what they don't.
Well, Zootopia is PG, so I'm wondering if it's anything that's not G. Automatically
Maybe
filtered.
I'd have to look at it, and maybe I could loosen those a little bit for him. So,
Yep. Okay. Regardless, it's on Hulu.
the movie we're about to review, correct?
That movie is titled Prey, Prey. We'll talk about it right after this clip.
Whitetail. Sorry. Mauwi. Nita.
That was Prey, Prey, a 2022 American science fiction horror action film directed by Dan Trachtenberg, starring Amber Midthunder, Dakota Beavers, and others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Prey is the origin story of the predator in the world of the Comanche Nation 300 years ago. Naru, a skilled female warrior, fights to protect her tribe against one of the first highly evolved predators to land on Earth. So, technically, this is a Predator prequel.
It is.
Prequel to the original 1987 Predator movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Action 80s action classic, I would say. Would you say it's a classic? at this
It's a
point?
classic, yes.
Okay. Was it an instant classic at the time? No,
No, I think it got a lot of cable play, and that helped.
it definitely did. This was on heavy repeat
Oh,
on
yeah.
HBO.
The first time I saw Predator was on TV.
On like pay TV or like commercial cable type of TV.
It was late night cable TV.
Mhm.
So it may have been slightly edited, but I still remember most of maybe some of the extreme gore was taken out, but
It was close enough to keep you watching, basically.
yeah, there were still limbs falling off and all that fun stuff.
Sure. Yeah, in this movie, 300 years ago, it's a movie that only contains predators and Comanche Indians, Native Americans, I guess. And there's other people, but for the most part, that's what it is. In typical Predator style, predators land on Earth and start hunting things because that's what predators do. Predator's going to do what they're going to do. And in this case, Naru, a female Native American, is kind of caught up in fighting this predator and protecting her tribe, I guess. So it's a pretty sparse movie, in my opinion. It's definitely the 1987 Predator formula, where it's like Predator lands, people fight the Predator.
Yeah.
And that's really all you need to know. There's not much more plot or world building more than that for the most part. And that's what we got. Do you want to go first on Prey?
You know what? I'll hand this one off to you because you let me go first on 13 Lives.
Sure. I'm a big fan of Predator. We're going to rank the Predator movies. I've seen all of them. I've seen all of them more than once at this point. I've seen the first one probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 times, somewhere in there. Bought it on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, just watched it on 4K. So short of Laserdisc, I think I've seen it on every format it's ever been released.
Do you have the 4K 4-pack?
I do.
Same here. Yep.
Watched all those movies within the last couple days on 4K. And also watched the 2 Aliens versus Predator movies in the last 5 days or so. So I've been watching a lot of Predator. It's all very fresh, and I enjoyed this one. I think when Predator movies are at their best is when they're not trying to like build some kind of crazy mythology or expand on the Predator character itself. I think what the original has going for it is like this ragtag team of, I don't know, badasses. I don't know how else to explain.
Commandos.
80s version of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think they're a private army or something like that.
Yeah, if you watch Predator now, it's pretty awesome in just how much of a caricature all of those mercenaries are at the beginning of the movie. I don't think they started those stereotypes, but they're certainly leaning into them in that moment with each and every one of those characters. They all have like their own individual nationality too, and yeah, they're all very cliched characters, but cliches are a good shorthand when done properly. And I think that movie does it properly. And also that movie just does not show the Predator a whole lot.
No.
And it's better for it because there's a lot of mystique around what that thing is. It also helps that was the first movie, so nobody knew what that thing was. And in watching it again, I think the movie holds up. Still has 80s cheese on it, but it like the bones are there, And because of that, it's easy to forget those types of things. When comparing it to Prey, this movie that has now come out 35 years later, does not have an Arnold Schwarzenegger at its, heart, doesn't have the star quality that maybe he has or had at the time. Still has, I'm sure. But has modern filmmaking tools behind it. I think this movie does Predator justice in lots of ways that previous iterations, previous sequels have not necessarily been able to do. And that's to say that I really enjoyed it. What did
Well,
you think about it?
So when you mentioned this movie, this was not on my radar whatsoever.
You didn't even know it
I
existed.
didn't even know it existed. I did not know we were getting a Predator prequel in
When I texted you 2 days ago, 3 days ago, you had never heard that there was a Predator sequel coming out on Hulu?
and 13 Lies. Both of these movies I knew nothing about. I was like, okay, I'll watch these. What are they about? And then I read them. Like, okay, great. But I had no idea what I was, when you said, let's watch these, I'm like, sure, whatever.
Okay.
I trust you. I trusted you. And I'm glad you picked this one because I really enjoyed this movie.
All right. So we're on equal footing.
We're on
We
equal
liked it.
footing. Yeah. I watched Predator 6 months ago whenever I got the 4K,
Mhm,
and I forgot how awesome Predator the movie is.
mhm,
Right? It's an 80s classic, and it is full of 80s cliches and 80s gunplay, and they're in the jungle the whole time. And it's John McTiernan who directed the original Predator, of like Die Hard fame,
mhm.
other things, Last Action Hero. So he knows how to direct an action movie, no problem. So Predator, I agree, holds up. Um, this movie, like you said, it sticks to the Predator formula where we're in an isolated location. We have um, people who are even more undergunned. I mean, literally, don't even have guns in this movie. I guess are some guns, but like the Predator, even though he's not, or it's not as evolved as the Predators of our modern era, still has way more powerful firearms than what the Comanche have.
Mhm.
Still has invisible cloaking technology, is way more invulnerable than a normal human. So just to see the challenge of how are these people with spears and bow and arrows going to defeat the Predator. And
Mhm.
it was really fascinating to watch how Naru and then the director Trachtenberg kind of put the pieces together, where a good chunk of this movie is her just sort of slowly both learning about the Predator, but also kind of learning about her environment.
Mhm.
And then in the finale, it all comes together. And, how she's able to use both her skills and her knowledge of the environment to fight what is an obviously superior enemy.
Mhm.
So I really, enjoyed seeing that all come together. Like you said, the Predator is best when you don't see it because it's a monster and it's better in
Mhm.
the shadows. And this Predator exists in the background a lot. Like a lot of times the character is in the foreground and the background's kind of this out of focus Predator, which is even more menacing. Or it still has this cloaking technology, but it works a little bit differently. So like when it's failing, it kind of gives it this really eerie shape to it. Um, and I think this Predator was mostly played by an actor. I think it was like Diego de Luna, who's a 6'9" former basketball player.
Mhm.
So they got this giant of a person in this costume. And I would say, at least for what I could see, the majority of the time, it was not a CG creation. Now, obviously, there was times where it was, but I felt
Mhm.
like it was more watching an actual person in a costume, which gave the Predator a lot more weight and menace to it. Um, yeah. So, and like you said, this brought in modern filmmaking. Like there's modern action scenes, there's modern camera movements about how they can like follow Naru, who's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like Schwarzenegger, at least for most of the Predator, he's shooting a gun at this thing.
Mhm.
Right towards the end, he goes toe to toe with it. But she has to be much more nimble right from the get out, and the camera does a great job of following her as she's running around, like literally running circles around this thing. And I think that's definitely because of the camera filmmaking techniques we have now. There's also a cool dog in this movie. Have you heard about this dog? Like the real life dog actor?
No.
So this can tie into Zach and I's episode last week, favorite dog performances.
Mm-hmm.
So this dog was found not because it's an actor, but because it's a similar breed to what the Comanche tribe would have during that era. And apparently the dog was a nightmare on the set, but like in the cutest way. Like it would miss its marks just because it wanted to go say hi to people all the time. Like it was a super friendly dog.
Sure. And they don't need it to be friendly. They need it to be somewhat stoic.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And not just excited to be around these people. So the Mid Thunder was her name. She described the dog as a hot mess, but an adorable hot mess. So yeah, if you get a chance, just read up. I think the dog's name is Coco. It sounds like it was a terrible actor, but a real pleasure to have on the set.
Sure. Yeah, I liked the dog a lot, enough that like halfway through, I picked up my phone and searched, "Did the dog die?" Have you ever seen that website?
Oh no. Does it tell you?
Does the dog die?
Does the dog die? Okay.
Yeah, and it'll tell you in advance what you're getting into with the movie. Because I don't like it when dogs die. And I want to know in advance. I want that spoiled for you.
Right, if I'm going to have to see this poor dog die.
Right. Yeah. Because it's a Predator movie, and if you've been binging Predator movies over the course of 4 days, you know that animals can die in them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And animals die in this movie. But not the dog. So I was okay with it.
The CG animals were not great.
I thought the bear was done pretty well.
The bear was okay.
The snake was brutal.
And the lion.
Yeah, the lion was not great.
Yeah. I think the bear was okay.
The lion and the snake were mercifully short parts of the movie.
Yeah.
But the bear scene I thought was pretty awesome.
The bear was better when it was just parts of the bear you saw, like its mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you saw the whole bear running towards the camera, you're like, this is okay.
I didn't even notice it.
Okay.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, so again, last week, Zach and I did favorite bear performances. So after watching all these Bart the Bear clips just a week ago, maybe I had all those stuck in my head.
Sure.
So I just couldn't compare.
Yeah, I mean, I think Revenant definitely did it better.
By
just hiding a lot of the bareness in quick cuts and stuff like that. And this movie does that too, but there are occasionally times where it's pulling out for something.
I did find the French fur trappers to be sadistically evil in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't know if they needed to be that evil. I guess you kind of needed a bad guy for the Predator to run roughshod over, because you want that cool scene of it like decapitating people and being the Predator.
Yeah, and you kind of get the vibe like early on in the movie when they're setting up who these members of the Comanche Nation are, and stuff like that. I was kind of like, am I gonna want to see all these people just get dispatched one by one by a Predator type of thing? And so they needed more fodder, I think, and that's why you get these comically evil fur trappers who deserve it type of thing.
Yeah.
And you still get kind of the innocent bystanders on team good that still get caught up in the Predator's eyesight and stuff like that, but it's at least mixed in with carnage of people that deserve it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
In the first movie, that was like remember in the first movie, like in the first 15 minutes, they actually like attack a base and
doesn't it start as, isn't the first Predator a rescue mission?
Yes.
Like the commandos were brought in to rescue some people from the rebels or something. It's one of these like go to the South American country and rescue them from the rebels or whatever.
Right. Yep. And it's like a comically ridiculous gunfight.
Yeah.
Between Americans and like faceless Spanish people.
Right. Yeah. Who like have
in that movie
impossible aim and a lot of
in this movie
spraying.
They didn't make the fur trappers faceless, but they were comically evil, I would say.
They were, yes. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it kind of took the last couple minutes of the original Predator, which is like, okay, he's out of bullets.
Mm-hmm.
That spraying gunfire into the jungle did not work.
Is that right?
And so how is he going to outsmart this obviously superior being? And some of what made that interesting is that Arnold Schwarzenegger is just such a physical presence that you're having this guy who's not used to losing, who had all the confidence in the world and has completely lost all of his team to this enemy. He's the last person alive in that movie. Spoiler alert. Then it's like he has to not just, bull in a china shop this. He has to figure out how to outsmart this enemy. And I think in this movie, you start from that position. You start where Arnold Schwarzenegger ended in the original Predator, in that she doesn't have a chance. One, she doesn't have a gun. And two, if she went toe to toe with him without being smart, she witnesses people do that. She witnesses bears do that and just completely get annihilated by it. So she realizes very early that, I think in the beginning, she doesn't even want to fight it. She just doesn't want to get killed by it. She's like, it's almost kind of like a chase movie. It's a hunting movie where the predator's hunting her.
Yeah.
And then after realizing that this is not going to end, then she decides that she's going to take a stand. There's also like a strong through line of her not necessarily being respected as a hunter or a survivor or a food provider for her tribe, for lack of a better word. And so I liked that there was like a character progression there. This movie does the trapped in a swamp scene so much better than Jurassic World Dominion just did, in my opinion.
With Bryce Dallas Howard crawling through the mud.
Yeah, I mean, I know people liked that scene. It was maybe the only suspense in that movie, but this one was far more suspenseful. And at one point, she's not even like being chased. It's just, will she get out?
Right. When's the last time you saw quicksand in a movie? Like, it's not technically quicksand, but it was kind of the same. And even quicksand is like an 80s, 70s, 60s plot thing. So they brought that back, which I thought was cool.
The nuts and bolts are the traditional quicksand for sure.
Right. Yeah. You're going to keep sinking. The more you struggle, the worse it gets. So you have to find some way. Yep.
Yeah. I liked that. I also liked that she had a traditional weapon, but she was using it in a non-traditional way.
Oh, the hatchet with, yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. And how, even though that was occasionally silly, it was okay because she was fighting a predator. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, it's like the one thing you give to her that's like probably not even remotely historically accurate, but it's okay because it's a Predator movie. And so,
and I also I like the design of the Predator, like the fact that he has, instead of rockets, he has I don't know, darts or bolts, like crossbow bolts. Now they still are laser homing, so that like it's not like he's shooting, like bows and arrows, but they seem to take his weapons or its weapons down a step also. So we're not looking at like full on explosions.
Mm-hmm.
Even the helmet is not a metal helmet. It looks like it's made from like the skull of maybe another predator, but it's still outfitted with laser sights and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of like a bone skull.
Yeah.
And it just the garb itself was like far more sparse from an armor perspective. And I believe it was skinnier too. It wasn't near as like just jacked. It was more slim and athletic looking.
Yeah.
Than just ridiculously roided out.
Well, and like 80s Predator was monstrous, if I remember correctly.
For sure.
Yeah.
And this one was, but more in like a Slender Man kind of way.
It was still huge.
Like a creepy. It was huge for sure. But it was more like runner physique than bodybuilder physique. Which made sense because you didn't need a bodybuilder to hunt her down type of thing. I thought all the characterization and the hard work they did in the beginning paid off towards the end.
Yeah.
And the fact that they kept it simple, but they shifted enough things that I found it interesting. I'm so glad they didn't do some of like my worst fears as I was watching the movie. which I won't say because maybe people will have the same fears and they'll be happy. But like Predator movies past first Predator have a tendency to like make predators a bigger deal or try to give them a deeper lore than really what they should have.
And yeah, give a lot of world building.
Right. I thought maybe they might pull like a Village M. Night Shyamalan type situation here, and they didn't do that, which I was happy about.
Oh, that was not my concern whatsoever.
It's totally part of my concern based on what they've done in previous movies.
Okay.
Also, the guy who directed this, Dan Trachtenberg, directed 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a movie that kind of does one of those things at the end. And so
That's interesting that he directed 10 Cloverfield Lane. Because
which is a sequel as
which
well.
it's a sequel, but it's still like a movie where it takes beats from whatever it's adapting or a sequel or prequel to, but still devises its own kind of little world around it.
Mhm.
Like not that these are the same movies, but they're kind of the same idea. Like he's done the same thing twice now, of like sliding himself into a pre-established canon world or whatever, and then being like, how do I make my own movie within this successfully? Yeah, I think successfully is the big part.
Right. And it does give the fact that it is a prequel and that you are seeing like an earlier iteration of a Predator.
Mhm.
It does give more lore to Predator, but not change the nature of a Predator.
And
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I have some general Predator questions. Maybe we'll save this for our Predator discussion.
Sure. I also really liked the general aesthetic of the movie. Like it's all prairies and forest. No real jungle going on here. There's nowhere to hide on the ground when you're in the forest. It's like only up in the trees can you hide real well. And like the cinematography, that type of stuff. I mean, we're not talking Revenant levels here, but it was more than what you expect from your typical Predator movie in the visuals department. And I also really liked that they didn't CGify the Predator, or they did and we don't realize it, and it was great. One or the other happened.
I mean, when it was jumping from tree to tree from a wide shot, that was obviously CG.
Well,
but
sure.
it was looked good enough because you're far enough away that you don't care.
They picked their moments.
Right. They knew when to use it. Which is, I think, all good CG is. How can you enhance the movie, not make the movie out of it?
Agreed. Anything else on Prey we haven't mentioned?
No.
I don't think so either. Who would you recommend this movie to?
I would recommend this movie to Predator fans.
Certainly.
For sure. I would recommend this movie to like John Wick action fans.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could see that.
And I would recommend this movie to maybe horror fans. It's not a horror movie, but definitely has like some horror thriller elements to it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think Predator movies, they're not straight horror movies, certainly, but there's definitely elements to them.
Yeah.
For sure. But if you're not any of those things, I'm not sure you would even care about this to begin with. And there's no like bigger artistic statement here that might ever get you to care either.
I think if you want to see like Native American people, if you want to see an action movie featuring Native American people and their weapons, this is I can't think of much more along that line.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I was getting like Assassin's Creed vibes at times. I don't know have you played those video games?
No, but I know the premise.
You're right.
I've seen the movie.
Yeah. So that kind of some of those action scenes felt like a video game in a good way, not in the like this is a video game kind of way. So
sure. All right, Prey. I'll give it a 3.5. What will you give it?
Oh man, I'm honestly between a 4 and a 4.5.
Oh really?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Nice.
I'm gonna stay at a 4 right now.
Okay.
But there is a possibility as I'm making my 2022 list later in the year, like I could revisit Prey for sure.
Cool. I think this movie will probably grow on me. I can't imagine it will lose any face over time.
Mhm.
But for now, 3.5.
Awesome.
All right, that was Prey. Before we get out of here, we are going to rank the Predator movies we've seen.
Can we say light spoilers from here on out?
Sure.
Okay.
If you do, I mean, no Predator movie has like a really strong anything, I would
No,
say.
but
But if you absolutely don't want to hear anything about the Predator movies, maybe skip forward, or you might hear something you don't want to. But here's a spoiler for you: every Predator movie has somebody in the movie that is normally really broadcasted that they're the person in the movie, and then everybody else dies.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, they're fighting the Predator solo. It's pretty much the formula for every Predator movie.
having watched 4 of the 5 of these now.
Sure.
Yeah.
The details change here and there, but for the most part, that's the formula.
I do have a question on Predator lore.
Okay.
And so this is from watching some of the other Predator movies, and some of the lore is that predators are hunting species across the galaxy and specifically collecting spines for DNA. Now, obviously, in the first Predator, there is that famous scene where the Predator holds up whoever like the Native American character was. He was probably called like Chief or something like that. There's that scene where he holds up his skull and spine, very famous, and maybe puts on his belt. Does that happen?
Don't remember.
Oh, well, you just watched Predator, I thought.
I did, but
Okay.
I watched literally 7 Predators in the last 5 days.
When in the series did they establish that they're collecting DNA to make them better? Like, was that in the first movie, or was that something later that happened?
I don't remember that being specified in any movie.
It was in the Shane Black one.
In the Shane Black one.
Okay, so maybe that's where they decided that's what's happening.
That could be.
Okay.
I think most of the other movies, it's more categorized as they're just hunters looking for trophies, and they're looking for worthy opponents, because normally they land and they have their way with a population.
Yeah. Yeah, the Shane Black one seemed to really try to explain a lot of why they do what they do.
Sure. That is the movie that it reiterates the hunter honor trophy type of situation the best is Alien versus Predator, the first one. That movie's all about like them landing and them storing aliens here so that they can hunt them on the planet later.
Okay.
Type of thing. And spoiler alert, the whole thing with that movie is that it's the only one that a predator teams up with a human in the movie in order to defeat a common enemy,
Which happens to be an alien or a xenomorph.
Sure.
Okay.
A very specific alien that you would need a partner for. Which I thought was like a decent progression.
Okay. Yeah.
For what you would expect from a warrior who cannot defeat this on their own. You know what I mean? Like humans and predator working together to survive a bigger enemy that they can't defeat alone, type of thing. Yeah. I don't remember that one in the Shane Black movie though. I watched that 2 nights ago. I don't remember that piece of it. I guess, do they establish that at the beginning with all the lab stuff?
Yeah, it's in the lab stuff with Jake Busey, and
that makes sense.
Jake Busey, like Gary Busey's gone from looking less crazy to more crazy, and Jake Busey's done the opposite. Like when he started out like in the 90s, he looked super crazy, and now he looks kind of normal. And I don't know, he's got like the opposite effect of his dad. Yeah.
Could be. All right. Let's rank these.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen 4. You've seen 7. So you just want to kind of go through your 7, and then I'll go through my 4.
Sure.
Or do you want to do your 3 and then we'll go back and forth? I don't care either way.
Why don't I run through my 7 and then
Okay,
we'll go
perfect.
through yours. My number 7 is Aliens versus Predator: Requiem, which is the second AVP movie. This movie was directed by the same guys who brought you Skyline, a notoriously awful um, sci-fi movie. The sequel is much better, Skyline Beyond. I think
Beyond
what
Skyline.
it was called, Beyond Skyline.
Yeah.
At least that movie knew what it was. Skyline took itself way too seriously. Anyway, Aliens versus Predator: Requiem is it's a dumb alien movie and an even dumber Predator movie, I would say. It literally did nothing other than bring aliens and predators to Colorado and then have like a town defend themselves against the aliens and the predators. And all the characters were stupid. Like literally they do dumb things in the movie. And there was never one character that followed the formula that you expect, that it's like this is the person that's going to be kind of your ground 0
Mhm.
and they're going to figure this out at some point. That never happens in the second AVP movie, and that makes the whole thing just kind of feel like a giant waste of time. Because there are characters that survive, it's just they don't survive in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
So my number 6 is The Predator, which is the Shane Black movie, which is another movie that kind of feels pointless. And it has some interesting things about it, mostly that the writing feels like a Lethal Weapon movie and not a Predator movie. And some of the characters are interesting in them, but it's definitely the most CG heavy of all of them.
Yeah.
And I think it suffers from that. And it also suffers from kind of like a lack of the ability to just kind of kill off its own characters. It wants to keep these people around for a long time. It's kind of in love with the characters more than it is the predators. And the movie shouldn't be about all the chuff around the main character. Those people should just
You
get
need all that.
dispatched.
You need all that Shane Black witty banter. Can't happen if you start killing off Keegan Michael
Turns-
Key.
Turns out you don't need all that witty banter.
Well, tell Shane Black that.
I mean, the witty banter works great in The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for that. And I think there's a time and a place for it in Predator movies. It's just you have to like dispatch these people faster. And that movie just people hang around way too long. That and what's her name? She played Psylocke in did she play Psylocke?
Oh,
Yeah,
Olivia
she played
Munn.
Psylocke. Olivia Munn in this movie. I just don't buy that she's a scientist that turns commando over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
Like she's literally never held a gun at the beginning of the movie. And then like by the end, she's like rattling off, with an M16 and stuff.
Yep.
It was just kind of like, okay. It has nothing to do with her gender, by the way. They
No,
could have
you
taken
just-
they could have taken any doctor from those lab scenes and then tried to make him a BA by the end of the movie, and I wouldn't have bought it. My number 5, Alien versus Predator, which also is not a good Alien movie or a great Predator movie, but I think it's a decent Predator movie. In that, at least they expand the mythology of the predators, but they do it, in my opinion, in a respectful way to what came before it. So all the additions to the predator mythology, the things that they have the predator do, make sense to me as far as like what predators have represented in the movies that came before it, in that they're hunters and that they are bound by some code of honor. They generally don't attack people who don't have weapons because that's not a fair fight on some level. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie for that reason. My number 4 is Predator 2, which a lot of people love, and it's fine, but it kind of feels like a Muppet movie at times. There's lots of men in suits, and they're very rubbery, and the concrete jungle just is not the same as the jungle to me. And there's a lot in rewatching it. There is a lot of detective story in Predator 2.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know. There's better versions of this movie that don't have predators in them. My number 3, Predators from 2010. I like this movie. It's basically Hunger Games with Predator. They just literally parachute in a bunch of people who are asleep. Like they literally wake up midair as they're falling. And they're dropped on in a jungle. They have to figure out who each other are. And then over the course of like the beginning of the movie, they learn that like they all have their own individual style of being awesome. So you got like Danny Trejo, who's like from the Mexican cartel, and then you got a guy from Japan who's what do they call them?
Yakuza.
Yeah, he's a Yakuza. Then you've got the ex-Navy SEAL. They're all these, various action cliches, and they've all been dropped in this one place to survive the Predator. So it's kind of a survival movie at the same time. It's another movie that is just Predator, dispatching people one by one until the person who you thought would survives and defeats the Predator in an interesting and creative way. And I like that about it. My number 2 is Prey, which we just talked about. And my number 1 is the original, which we also talked about a bunch.
Yeah. All right. I'm not shocked by that ranking.
Yeah, I think when I watched Prey, I assumed it would be somewhere in the middle. Maybe not number 2. Maybe there's a recency bias there. We'll see over time. But I think it's a very solid Predator movie.
Now, when you mentioned this, I told you I had not seen Predators or The Predator.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you which one I should watch. And you recommended to me The Predator, which is your number 6, not Predators, your number 3. So why was that?
My memory of The Predator was definitely stronger than Predators.
Okay.
When you asked me that.
Okay.
That being said, I do think there's more interesting things to talk about in The Predator over Predators.
I mean, there's definitely a lot going on in The Predator, and that's why it's my number 4 Predator movie.
The Predator is a messy movie.
It is. It's I like Boyd Holbrook. It does have this cast of characters. Some are interesting. Some are Thomas Jane playing Tourette's for comedy, which I'm like, what are we? Like, no. Or
I think they got flack even when that movie came out.
Yeah. Or like Jacob Tremblay is autistic, so he's super smart.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later he says the F word.
Oh, that's right, he does. And this is before he did Good Boys or whatever that movie was. Or maybe
I think it was in
time.
the same zone.
Okay. Yeah, because he looked around the same age, more or less.
This was his bad boy period.
Yep.
When he was like 13 or 12 or whatever he is in these movies.
Yeah, he's probably around 12 years old. Yeah, but who's the bad guy? Like Sterling K. He's the guy from
Sterling K. Brown.
Sterling K. Brown. He was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew what movie he was in. I wish everyone else was in the same movie he was in.
Yeah,
because he would just he walked into the room was just like, F you to everyone right away.
Yeah,
and I love that. So, the best part of the movie is they eventually make it to the jungle. Like a lot of it is the Predator in the lab, and it's a lot of CG Predator. And then there's CG Super Predator, and there's CG Predator dogs, and okay. And then finally they make it to the jungle, and that's when the Predator's like up in the trees, picking people off, and that was like finally you gave me what I wanted from this movie, but it took a long time to get there. Yeah. So yeah, by far my number 4. Number 3 would have to be Predator 2. The first time I saw it was when I got the box set, and this movie really is a like 90s slasher flick with a Predator in it. It feels like the screenplay was different, and then they added the Predator to it later. So yeah, because there's a lot of it. It's like hiding in the shadows, it's picking people off. It's doing all the things predators do, but it's filmed like a slasher movie.
I would not be shocked if that is 100% true.
Yeah. Well, and even though it's the thing, like, you know, in the late 80s, they had movies that take place in the 90s in the future. And like in the 90s future, it was gangs everywhere. Everyone had super guns. There's drugs everywhere. Like, doesn't that movie start with this huge firefight with Danny Glover and a bunch of gang members? Like, there's no predator in the first half hour of that movie.
I mean, there's off-screen predator action in that sequence, but it does it focuses a lot on those 80s caricatures, even though that was a 90s movie.
Yeah. So yeah, number 3. Won't be watching that one again.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, controversial. Predator, the original.
Really? So the new one eclipses it.
I think Prey is objectively a better made film. Maybe it's because that Predator has some of that 80s cheesiness to it, which is both helps and is a little bit, it can hurt a little bit. I think that the final confrontation, if you give me the Schwarzenegger versus Predator scene versus the Naru versus Predator scene in Prey, I think her sequence with the Predator is better.
Okay.
I'd have to rewatch the Schwarzenegger one, but I remember it being my least favorite part of the movie.
The last sequence.
The last sequence where he has
last battle, last stand.
Right. I do have this is something I couldn't remember. In Predator, is there a sequence where he's like hiding in mud or a waterfall and he opens his eyes and all you see are his eyeballs? Or something like that? Or is that Last Blood? Is that a Rambo thing?
No. That happens in Predator. For sure. There's a scene where he discovers that mud disguises him, where he's like literally in the roots of this tree.
That's right. He's in the tree. Okay.
Yeah. When she crawls out of the mud for the first time in Prey.
Yeah.
Spoilers. She kind of like rests on the roots of that tree.
Yep.
In a similar way to how he sits in that movie, which I'm sure was not an accident.
Not at all. No.
Right.
So yeah, I think as of right now, Prey is my number 1 Predator movie.
Okay. I don't think the movie will ever get there for me, just because of the nostalgia factor for the original. Like, Arnold is so awesome in that movie, and he is pure Arnold. There's just so many quotable lines. There's just not much talking in Prey. You know what I mean? They're not going for quotable lines in Prey for sure.
No.
Which it feels like they're trying to go for quotable lines in the original Predator.
And then same for the Predator, the Shane Black one. Like, they throw a lot of those lines in again. Like, there's get to the choppers and a bunch of motorcycles.
Oh, it was
You're like,
so eye roll inducing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or there's the you're a pretty mother effer. They say in Predator, the Predator also. Like, okay, a little too much. I know you wrote the first one, but
sure,
it's a little too much here.
Yeah. There's a couple things in the 2018 the Predator, that are like groan worthy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's one of them. The choppers joke.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. The whole dog stuff in the Predator too. The Predator was just like, why are these dogs in here?
Yeah, it's just there to keep retrieving things for them.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
It was lame. Cool. So we both had similar 1s and 2s, which is awesome.
Correct. Yeah. I think our lists were similar.
Not entirely shocking though. I would say, in looking at this collection of 7 movies on my list, the only 2 that I would consider good movies would be number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
Everything else is entertaining enough to not great.
The Predator 2 is a nostalgia trip for those movies of that era. The Predator, completely skippable.
Yeah. I will say, since you have it on 4K, I assign you watching Predators from
Oh, of course. I
2010
mean, I
at
own it on
some
4K.
point.
Yeah.
It might be interesting to watch it now, and then maybe the next time we do a last and top 10, you could throw it in there since you've never seen it before. Curious to know.
We should go through. Oh, I have a Patreon idea. That's got a Patreon idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything you can tease or down the road Patreon idea?
I mean, we could do it right. We could do it tonight if we wanted to.
Okay.
We could go through the movies that I own that I haven't actually seen.
Perfect.
And
We're doing
you
that
could be
for the
like,
Patreon.
watch it. Definitely be like, I skip that.
Sounds good. Hot
Cool.
taking the movies that Kyle has not seen. Love it. That's what we're going to do on the Patreon episode this week. If you're not a Patreon, you could do that by going to patreon.com/Cinereelists. If you don't know, we release after show episodes where we talk a little bit more after we talk for the free episode. So if you were to become a Patreon right now, for your first $3, you'd have access to over 100 after show episodes. So it's not like you're paying $3 to hear the conversation we're about to have. I mean, you would be. You would be not only getting that conversation, but if you need more Cinerealists in your life, you would be immediately accessing another, I don't know, 100 hours of content, possibly. I don't even know how many hours,
I mean,
but a lot.
Patrons go 5 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on each one. So
Right. So, yeah, there's a lot waiting for you for your first month of subscribing, for sure, if you were to do that. You could also follow us on social media at Cinereelists on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You could follow me on my personal Letterboxd or Twitter account at YoJRB.
you can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
Next week, we will probably be doing just kind of like a random list that we come up with. If you have any ideas for that list, feel free to email it to us, heyguys@cinereelists.com. We will take all suggestions into account. We might also be watching, or instead watching, we haven't decided yet, or maybe not watching at all, but possibly we might be watching Day Shift on Netflix, which comes out next Friday. Stars Jamie Foxx and Dave Franco in like an action adventure vampire comedy type thing, from what I understand.
Vampires. That's news to me.
Here's the plot synopsis.
Okay.
A blue-collar dad provides for his family as a San Fernando Valley pool cleaner, which is secretly a front for a union of vampire hunters. So there's vampires.
All right. So it's Blade in the suburbs.
Possibly. Yeah. We'll see. So that might be happening. I'll probably see Day Shift regardless. But I don't know if we'll talk about it on the podcast. We'll see. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it Cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.